Tahir is an imam, this teacher, an active father, son, obviously, and a servant of Allah. And he was born in London, England. He's been in the San Francisco Bay Area since 1983. He completed his religious studies, his Islamic studies in India, and he is the imam at one of the oldest masjids in America, the Islamic Center of San Jose. He's been the imam since 2001. After 7 years as a middle school teacher at an Islamic school, he sat on the board, or he sits currently on the board of the Averroes Institute, one of the oldest Islamic high schools in America. He's also a teacher currently at the Zaytuna College, that many of you all know about. He teaches Islamic law or fiqh at the Zaytuna College currently. And he has a passion for community service as well. He served on the Human Rights Commission for the city of San Jose for over 5 years, and the Human Relations Committee for the county of Santa Clara for 1 year. And he also does an annual Hajj group every year. He goes to Hajj with a group, leading a group, and which his group actually has been covered by CNN. His Hajj trip has been covered by CNN twice. So inshallah, we're honored to have him here. He'll be with us in the community for a few days. And everyone make dua as his son is getting treatment here at the local hospital, Children's Hospital. So everyone make dua that inshallah everything goes well for his son while he's here. And the Ronald McDonald House is hosting his family here as well. So thank you to especially Sister Amina for helping to arrange that through the Ronald McDonald House. And lastly, he's doing a program on Sunday at the Westchester Masjid. If you'd like to register for that, it's I think it's a few hours of program that he's doing there, inshallah. So you can either register online, it's a $20 cost because there's some materials and stuff he'll be covering, but it's $30 at the door. So you can register at deenintensive.com if you'd like to attend. And without any further delay, inshallah, Imam Tahir. I don't know if there's a way to turn this down a little bit, because maybe a little bit.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu. ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. I begin in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and that His beloved Nabi and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His last and final messenger. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help, His protection, His mercy, His blessings, His sustenance, and praying and begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst the most successful individuals both in this life and the hereafter. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. I would like to begin by thanking all of you for allowing me to be here with you this evening. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. And I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the next few moments that we spend together are mutually beneficial, inshallah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. I get to travel a lot. It just comes with the territory. And Allah has blessed me with the ability to have seen various different Muslim communities in the country. And sometimes, or let me rephrase that, most of the time you enjoy your stay in the Muslim communities. Sometimes you leave having felt a little hurt in your heart. and you just hope that things were better. And of course, as I analyze my various different stays in the various different communities, there's one thing and one thing only that attracts me or makes me feel comfortable in any community that I visit, or uncomfortable in a community that I visit. And this is personal. And that is that when every individual in the community is a smiling, caring individual to each other, that cares for each other despite their differences, that cares for each other despite their differences, that they love each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they express that love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they respect each other for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the one thing that generally happens to be a turn-off happens to be when we see within communities the infighting and the arguments that go on amongst the individuals. And this is something that we need to be very, very conscious about, because generally the Muslim communities in the United States, and we have large Muslim, when I came, subhanAllah, I drove here from Toronto, and Ohio now holds the record for probably being one of the more beautiful states among all the states that I've visited, and I'm not saying that to make you happy, but it holds another record as well. It holds a record for having 2 masjids right off of the freeway that you can actually see on the freeway. Toledo, we saw it, we got excited. We were driving by the masjid in Toledo, and I was like, that's a masjid. But is it a masjid? You never know, right? So I quickly got onto my iPhone, my Zabiha app, and quickly hit closest masajid, and yes, it showed me like 0.3 miles, and I figured that was a masjid. And then, an hour or so later, here I come into Cincinnati, and I get to see the large masjid. I had no idea you had such a beautiful masjid in Clifton. I always thought this was a small musalla. And, I just didn't get here until today. But going back, generally, the masajid in the United States, the communities in the United States, happen to be of very diverse individuals. Different people. Allah has blessed us with the ability to come to these lands, to come to these shores. Our rizq was meant to be here, whether we like it or not, whether we like it, whether we dislike it, whether we agree with America, whether we disagree with America, whether we feel we're better than others, we feel others are better than us, no matter what, our rizq is here. For now, our rizq and our sustenance is here, and Allah has put us here for a reason, and you and I happen to be here. Unlike most parts of the Muslim world, or most parts of the world, and even most parts of Europe, because the immigration in Europe happens to be very concentrated. So if you travel to Germany, you may have Muslims from different parts of the world, but the Turkish dominance happens to be there. Right? You travel to France, you'll find an Algerian dominance. It's just the way it is. In the United States, that's not necessarily the case. In the United States, the Muslim communities are very diverse. You will have a percentage of African American Muslims, the indigenous Muslims, who unfortunately have totally been sidelined. Muslim communities don't even care about, unfortunately. Then you have the brothers and sisters from the Middle East. Then you have the brothers and sisters from the Indo-subcontinent. And then you have Muslims from different parts of the world. Now, this diversity is very beautiful. We boast about this diversity. As an imam, when I talk to people, I say that there's people from 25 to 30 different countries that attend my masjid. It sounds great, it sounds beautiful, right? That we are not a people from one part of the world. We are a religion, we are a faith of individuals that come from different parts of the world. But the question we ask ourselves is that, do we have the Medinan teachings inside our masajid? Right. This diversity is not new. This diversity is not new. This diversity existed in the time of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Just last Saturday, I delivered an entire lecture on the United Colors. I call the lecture the United Colors of the Sahaba. Of how you had so many different companions of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam that came from different parts of the world to Makkah al-Mukarramah, some of them, and then primarily to Medina Munawwara to accept Islam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam taught these individuals and sent them back to their communities as mu'allims, as teachers. He told them, he said, you know, yassira wa la tu'assira, right? Make it easy for them. Don't make it difficult for the people. Bashira, right? Give them glad tidings. Wa la tunaffira. Don't scare them away from the deen. Don't turn people. Don't say scary things about the faith. Give them glad tidings. It's a faith of glad tidings. It's a faith of mercy. It's a faith of inclusion. We're a community that includes people. We're not a community that excludes people. That's who we are. That's not my words. Those words of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So this cultural diversity that exists in North American masajid today is something that existed during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now we go to the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And what do we learn from the teachings of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Right? The Prophet ﷺ makes it very, very clear through his teachings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ وَأُنْثَى. Right? We created you male and female. So both the male gender and the female gender have been acknowledged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they both have their roles in the community and in the society. That you may culturally come from a land where the females are sidetracked, right? Where the females have absolutely no say in the society. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledges this in the Quran. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ ذَكَرٍ وَأُنْثَى. Now we understand that there are roles. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has defined roles for these genders. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. Right? The only reason that you've been put into tribes is so that you can be, so that people get to know you. Right? That we look different. You know, we eat different foods. We can talk about different foods. We can talk about our different cultures. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to mention, Inna akramakum. Everyone in this dunya wants karam. Everyone in this dunya wants honor. Everyone in this dunya wants izzah. Everyone. It's human nature. A person smiles at you, you feel happy. It's true. A person smiles at you, we all feel happy. A person says hello to you, we say hello back. A person smiles at you, it's contagious. We smile back. Right? We smile back. These are the simple things that makes people happy. People want izzah, people want honor, people want dignity. And people find this izzah and honor in various different things. Some find it in jah, in their position. Some find it in their wealth. Some find it in their looks. Right? Various different things. The human mind, this is the way the human beings have been set up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most beloved, the most honorable, the most dignified amongst you happens to be the one who is most conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is most aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some scholars define this as most scared, most fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear is the first degree. Imam Ghazali mentions the various different degrees. Fear is one. You do things out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you do things because you're commanded to do them. Then you do them because you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the sign of a believer. A kamil, a perfect believer is one who does things out of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this goes right back. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most honorable amongst you is the one, amongst all of us is the one who has the most taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can you define taqwa? Who knows? How many of us know how much do I know about you or you or you? We don't. I don't know whether you pray 5 times a day or not. You don't know whether I pray 5 times a day or not. I don't know if you fast on Mondays. I don't know if you wake up for the morning for Qiyam al-Layl, because that's the beauty about us. We're a people that keeps our ibadah to ourselves, our worship to ourselves. Bayni wa bayna Allah, bayni wa bayna Rabbi is between me and my Lord. No one gets to know about this. That's taqwa. That's where your rewards are increased. Right? That's where your rewards are increased. That the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in would give a date, 1 tamar, and their reward would be larger than a mountain. And then there would be people who would give as much as large as a mountain, and they wouldn't even have the reward of a date. Sincerity. right? Sincerity. These are things, these are principles that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught to us. Right? So we don't know each other's taqwa. We don't know, and we don't even know the taqwa of our own spouses. Right? We don't. Right? Because what does what does Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tell us? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنْظُرُ إِلَى صُوَرِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at our faces. According to one narration, إِلَى أَمْوَالِكُمْ, at your wealth. وَلَكِنْ يَنْظُرُ إِلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at your hearts. And one narration mentions the word أَعْمَالِكُمْ as well, and your deeds. And our hearts and our deeds. I'm driving this somewhere. I'm trying to drive this somewhere. And so we need to be very conscious of this. When I, as an individual, and that's why people who talk about tazkiyah, for example, and for many individuals it's a bad word, unfortunately. Right? Tasawwuf is a bad word for many people. It depends on how you look at it. But if we were to open some of the books, whether you agree with tasawwuf or not, we're not going to discuss that today. Right? But, you know, the diseases of the heart, the conditions of the heart. Adawa, animosity, bukhl. Right? These are conditions that exist. Every human being has certain things. Right? Animosity, hatred, greed, jealousy. These are all traits. These are all evil traits that human beings have. And there are certain people on the face of this earth who have passed, who have tried to work towards ridding human beings of some of these tendencies. Some of the methods that they have acquired are permissible. Some of the methods that they have acquired are definitely questionable. And some of the methods that they have acquired are definitely haram as well. We have to agree with them. But that said, this taqwa, this fear of Allah, this consciousness of Allah that exists inside us, no one knows about this. So what does this mean? This means that when I see another human being, when I walk into the masjid and I see a believer, right, we should assume that someone that comes inside the masjid and prays their salah happens to be a believer, inshallah. And if they're not and they're doing it because they're federal agents, may Allah make them believers. But we're going to assume that anyone, right? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you know, when he says, this Sahabi says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, he still gets slayed. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Halla shaqaqta qalba, did you rip open his heart? Did you see what was in his heart? Do you know if he had iman or not? So we're going to assume that anyone that walks into our doors, unless and otherwise they're guests, but if I see you and you see me and we say Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam, and we say Allahu Akbar and we begin our prayer, we're going to assume that we're Muslims. And the most important thing, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's our common denominator. That's our common denominator. My iman, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? We believe in Allah. That's our common denominator. That's where it all begins. And if I am to respect you, and you are to respect me, it's based on the fact that I happen to be one that believes in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I am a muwahhid. Right? I believe in tawheed. Right? I believe that Allah is one. I believe that there is none worthy of worship except Allah. Right? And what is shirk? What is shirk? Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bihi wa yaghfiru ma duna dhalika liman yasha. Shirk is something that won't be forgiven. Anything else else is forgiven. That is who we are. Now we have to, and you know, you have to understand this through your head and through your heart. What does this really mean? This means that if you believe that someone is a zani, is an adulterer, if someone is the one who owns a 7-Eleven and indulges in consuming, selling alcohol, usury, you know, one who has a mubtadi', has created all these divisions, you know, creates all these various different fitnas, you have to understand that if Allah gives tawfiq to this individual, and this individual makes tawbah, astaghfirullah rabbi min kulli dhanbin wa atubu ilayh. If an individual does this with a sincere heart, that person's forgiven. That brings that person right back to that common denominator. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. And we have to believe in this. Allah gives tawfiq to whoever He wants. Allah gives tawfiq, Allah takes tawfiq. That's from Allah. You look down at someone, Allah may take tawfiq away from you. What guarantees do we have?
No guarantees. No guarantees. That's why it is imperative that we as an ummah learn to love each other and respect each other despite our differences. Based on the common denominator of Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And ultimately it is Allah who will decide who will go to Jannah or not. Maliki yawmiddin. Allah is the owner of the Day of Judgment, not me, not you. Jannah is not a hotel reserved by some people for some people. This is a gift of Allah. This is the inayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't let anyone judge you. And this is a problem that we see in many of our Muslim communities and many of the various different individuals that we see in our communities. That we begin to judge. You're a Sufi, you're a Salafi, you're Jama'at Tabligh, you are this, you are that, you are this, you are that. Let's forget these titles. How you choose to believe in Allah and how you choose to worship Him, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت. You are responsible. I am responsible for myself. I am responsible. Of course, there's the hadith, كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. And then, of course, I know Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi anil Munkar will come to that. That is our responsibility as well. But ultimately, on the Day of Judgment, it's me by myself. يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه لكل امرئ منهم يومئذ شأن يغنيه. You'll be on your own. You won't be responsible for the Sufi, the Salafi, the Tablighi. You won't be responsible for that. I'm responsible for myself. And the most important thing is the fara'id. The fara'id. Salah. Right? Our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salah, Sawm, Zakah, Hajj. That's what it comes down to. Sahabi of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam comes to the Prophet alayhi wa sallam says, Ya Rasulullah, this is all I'm going to do. Right? La azidu ala dhalik. I'm not going to do anything more. Just pray, I'm going to fast, give zakah. If I cannot go for Hajj, that's it. I'm not doing anything else. I'm done. I'm not going to do anything else. Imam Nawawi mentions this in his Arba'in. What does Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says? If you do this, you will be successful. If you just mention this is all, you're successful. And we have to believe in this. We have to believe in this because there is a great power. There's a great power that's an external power that wants to divide us. That wants to create an animosity between us. That wants to divide us amongst our cultural and religious differences. These lines. I'm this, you're that, you're this is an Arab masjid, this is a Pakistani masjid, the Pakistanis want this and the Arabs want. We can't afford that anymore. We need to get beyond these issues. Allah has blessed us with Iman. Can you believe this? Allah has blessed us with Iman. Look around, walk around, see the different, people say it's haram to walk. People argue about these kinds of things. You tell people, let me take you to a church on Sunday. Ya Imam, haram alayk, how could you do this? Take my children to the church. What kind of an imam are you? No, come. Let me show you what people do on Sundays inside a church. Right? So that when I come back for Salat al-Dhuhr and Salat al-Asr to the masjid, I put this forehead on the ground and say, Subhan Rabbi al-A'la, I value what I'm saying. I value what I'm believing. I believe in Allah, I don't believe in a statue. Right? That my worship is to Allah alone. I don't need an intermediary. I don't need someone to pass my prayers to God. Right? What's the number one reason for having a clergy parking at a hospital? You ever thought about this? Because there are people of certain faiths in this country that when they're passing away, they need to have a priest present. You need to have a priest present in order to get your sins forgiven. Right? To make sure that you have the final confession before you go and meet God. Right? What does Islam teach us? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Laqinu mawtakum. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. You don't need an imam. You don't need a priest. You just need iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. Man kana akhiru kalamihi la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah. That's the promise of my and your Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's who we are. That's the ummah that we are. We have a gift. We have a blessing. We have a blessing. We have an immense blessing. It's so powerful. When people see our blessing, they're like, really? How come you didn't tell me about this? You worship God? Like, who's God? Someone say, God, Allah. He exists. Let's not argue about where He is. Right? Ayn Allah. That's another argument. Allah. I believe in God. I don't care where. I don't need to know where He is. Allah exists. I worship Allah. He could be there. He could be everywhere. He could be wherever you want Him to be. We're not going to get it. See, that's the problem. We get into these arguments. We get into these arguments. And the same person who's arguing about where Allah is one who doesn't pray. Doesn't wake up for Fajr. The same person who's arguing about the length of the beard, right, is backbiting others. A beard has to be a fist length. If you shave your beard, haram. You cannot do salah. You cannot do adhan. Those are the arguments we're having, and then we're backbiting. Look at that. He calls the adhan at the masjid and he doesn't have a beard. Khair, we have those differences. But we are at a very crucial time in our lives right now, where the tide is working against us, where people want to see us divided, where we're at a point in our lives where we need to be united. The communities need to come together. Not one argument could be that we want to come together for the ummah around us. But it's not even the ummah around us. For most of us, it's our own children. This is a conversation we were having over dinner a few moments ago. How many of us can guarantee that our children will be Muslims? I mean, ask yourself. I mean, it's a very, very crucial question. It's a very difficult question. How many of us know, if you have children that go to high school, how many of you know what your children are up to? Ask yourself. How do you know what they're up to? If your children are in college and they're away from home, I don't mean to scare you. There's a sister help me out, Tarek, here, in Detroit. I met her in Detroit, in Canton, and she's doing a research. Did you hear about this research? Yeah, there's a sister in Canton, right here in Canton, and she's doing a research, statistics of Muslim children in colleges in the United States. And I don't want to be misquoted, and this is one of my books where I carry some of my notes, and let me see if I can. It's a really scary statistic. I'd like to say about 70% of young college-going students have tried alcohol. Muslim, not non-Muslim, Muslims. Okay, have consumed alcohol. About 40 to 50% have tried drugs, and 20%, 19-point-some%, have indulged in zina. These are not the other family's children. This is not the Pakistani's child, and this is not the Algerian's child, and this is my child. This is my brother. This is my sister. This is my ummah. This is what I'm worried about. This is and this is not, anyone that says not my child is the one who's the greatest in denial. It's not, it could be anyone's child. And always keep in mind, if you point your finger at someone else, that finger could be pointed right back at you. We need to have that level of respect for each other. That's the challenge. Our challenge is, yes, one of our challenge happens to be the greater community and how we act with them and so on and so forth. And I'm pretty sure that your imams and your mashayikh and your khatibs have talked to you and educated you about this. And we all continue to educate ourselves. But I'm a parent. I'm raising 2 young children. Very soon my child is going to be a teenager. I worry about this. Right? I worry about this. That when I wake up in the morning or when I come home from something and I see my child praying salah, I say, Alhamdulillah. You know, I don't care if my child got his hand here. I don't care if he got him here. It don't matter. He's worshiping Allah, and that's what matters. We need to come to that common denominator. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was diverse in his amal, was diverse in his practice. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam left his sunnah behind for the ummah. We choose from the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam the various different things that we do. You do whatever you have been taught. You do whatever you feel comfortable with, but don't put the other down. Respect. Respect. That's what it comes down to. You know, I was recently going through some notes of mine, and there's a very amazing book that I read some years ago, and it still happens to be in sort of the top 5 of the books that I've ever read. It's a book, the name of the book is The Sword of Allah, Sayfullah, Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. It's in English. If you like to read, if you don't like to read, I would urge you to purchase this book and read it. In fact, you don't have to purchase it. If you just go to google.com and put it in Google, you can download a PDF copy of it. It's authored by a Pakistani general of the army, A.I. Akram. I don't know what the A.I. stands for, but it's called A.I. Akram. He, after having served as a colonel and a general of the Pakistani army for many years, decided to do research on Walid radiallahu anhu. And he in his life has visited, this general, has visited every battle site that Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu fought on. Okay, that's not easy, by the way. Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was in a lot of battle sites. Right? He visited every single one of them, he studied him, he went through everything. And you know, I've read this book twice now. And you read this book, you read the various different chapters of how he initially was not a Muslim, how he ambushed the Muslims in Uhud, and then how he at some point, you know, saw the light. That look at these people, they don't want anything from me. They just want me to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. He leaves Makkah to go to Medina Munawwara. He leaves Makkah, he arrives at Medina Munawwara. He goes to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, I accept Islam. This is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. Right? This is going to be a part of my life. And he does that. He becomes a Muslim. And he remains a Muslim. He fights. He takes, during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he was the main army general. During the Khilafah, during this caliphate, he was all the way through. He fought and fought and fought. In fact, and fought, of course, the enemies to the extent where there were lands that he conquered in which he was more famous than the Amir al-Mu'mineen himself. That if Khalid were to stand and the Amir al-Mu'mineen were to stand, people would say salam to Khalid and no one would know the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Right? That was Khalid. Khalid. Right? Why wouldn't you want to name your children Khalid? Not Khalid. It's Khalid. Right? This is Khalid bin Walid, an amazing individual. And of course, the way Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu ran his Khilafah was that he gave autonomy. He gave the freedom to the various different commanders and so on and so forth to do whatever they wanted. Right? And Khalid radiallahu anhu acted, he had a certain style and he had a certain method. Umar radiallahu anhu, on the other hand, was a little more, he liked to have a little more control over issues. It was just his personality. You have to understand, these are personalities. The personality of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was different than that of Umar radiallahu anhu, which was totally different than that of Uthman radiallahu anhu. Right? So that's another thing. We have to understand our personalities amongst each other, that we see the khalas. There's certain people that happen to be softer and certain not so, and these are so. But what does Khalid radiallahu anhu, what does Umar radiallahu anhu do? Right? Khalid radiallahu anhu we all know, Khalid radiallahu anhu was, he liked to give gifts and he liked to dress nicely and so on and so forth. And Umar radiallahu anhu, on the other hand, was, not with me, didn't work with me. Umar radiallahu anhu becomes the Khalifa. He sends a letter. And he says, Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, famous, and you have to understand what he did to understand that what I'm going to say next, how big it was. He removed Khalid radiallahu anhu from his position. Right? He removed to the extent when Umar radiallahu anhu came, one narration mentions that Umar radiallahu anhu threw rocks, threw pebbles at Khalid because he was wearing nice clothes. He says, this is not our way. But what does Khalid do? Khalid opens his shirt and he sees the weapons. He says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I may be wearing nice clothes, but I'm ready to fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't underestimate me. They say Umar radiallahu anhu became convinced that day. That day Umar became convinced. But he removed Khalid from his position. He had every right to do so. A person who is so powerful, more powerful than the Amir al-Mu'mineen himself says, if that is what the Amir al-Mu'mineen wants, then khalas, I'm done. That's pretty big. Imagine our own egos. Let's take the example of one small masjid in one small town and the board of directors. I don't want to put my fingers in anyway, but people who know me know that I love. If I ever had a masjid, it's not my masjid is not my masjid, it's the community. But if I ever had a masjid and you wanted to be on the board of my masjid, I would have a clause in the bylaws that every board member has to clean the toilets. No, I'm not joking. No, I'm like serious. Being the director of the board of the masjid is not to say, oh, I'm the president. It's not about that. Service. On the day of judgment, Allah will not say, president, come here. You can put the president, you can put the person who's been serving the masjid for years that no one knows about. Who do you think who's going to get the more reward? We already know the answer. We already know the answer. And it's a no-brainer. Right? So this person is, Khalid radiallahu anhu is removed, and he says nothing. He says, alhamdulillah. Right? So we need to curtail our egos. We need to curtail our egos. Yes, I understand that we may know more Islam than someone else. I may be better than someone else. I may have this than someone else. But no, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're all one. We need to be together. That's the most important thing. And there's one thing that we can take away from this, is to share that love amongst each other. Right? Amongst each other, along our cultural lines. And then to our youth and our children. That's a different issue, but our youth and our children, we don't talk about them. We don't care about them. We run our organizations the way our parents ran them back home. That's what we do. We don't realize you live in America. We live in America. Wake up, smell the morning coffee. This is America. Right? This is not India. This is not Pakistan. This is not Australia. This is America. And every time has had, we live with the Quran and Sunnah. That's our bylaw. You do not discount the Quran and Sunnah. The Quran comes first. The Sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam comes after that. But there are, we need to understand the culture. We need to understand the environment. We need to understand the people. We need to understand. These are things that we need to understand. And believe it or not, to a great degree, our children do understand them better than we do. It's a reality, whether you like it or not. We can be in denial and say that's not the case. And then sometimes we talk about, what do these children know? What do the youth know? They don't know anything. I don't know anything. If it wasn't for the ammus and the uncles and the aunts in my community who would have kindly reminded me, guided me, blessed me, made dua for me, I wouldn't know what to do. But I have the honor of saying that these are people who have all guided me. How many of us are preparing the next generation? We're not. In most communities around America, it's just the same old people running the masjid. And by the way, I don't know what the semantics of this message is, so I'm not pointing my fingers at anyone. I don't want anyone to feel hurt. But this is it's generally what happens. No one knows what's happening. Right? And the youth, you're just a kid. You don't know what you're doing. No, we need to bring them in. You gotta bring them in. You gotta give them leadership positions. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam recognized that there were certain young Sahaba who had the ability, who had the characteristic, they were brought in. The senior Sahaba, they would look at Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and say, "This young child, why Abdullah ibn Abbas? Why, Ya Rasulullah?" And the Prophet ﷺ said, "You wouldn't understand. You don't know. Why Abdullah ibn Umar? Why, Ya Rasulullah? Why?" They wouldn't say this, but in their hearts they had this question. He's just a kid. He's just a kid, Look at us, we're Sahaba, we participated in Badr. What's this kid doing in our meeting? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had firasa. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had hikmah. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had wisdom. He understood this. He knew that this child would be a leader. He groomed that child. That's what we need to do. We need to groom you. I need to be groomed by the elders. All of you that have white hair, that white hair doesn't come. It's a lifetime of experience that you have. If you wouldn't point out my mistakes with love, with kindness, with compassion. Who am I won't learn. If you're just going to point your fingers at me and say, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, I'm going to get scared. I'm going to run away. I'm going to run away and start my own non-profit right down the street from the masjid. No, it's true. Most young Muslims today are starting up their own non-profits because there's no room for them inside masajid. They're being kicked out of masjids. And then when they're being brought in as volunteers, they're being clean. What do the masjid want from youth volunteers? Clean up the masjid. That's all we get them to do. Never organize an event, right? And then we say, oh, we'll let you organize an event, but micromanagement. No, let them do their things. Guide them. Make dua for them. We need to groom the next leaders of our communities, the next generation of leaders. It's so crucial because if you, all of you people that are older, and I mean that with love and respect. I don't mean that in any bad way. I say that with love and respect. If you don't groom my generation and the generation afterwards, what's going to happen after you leave this dunya? What's going to happen to this ummah? I know you care for the community. That's why you're here right now. But you need to groom people like me. You need to groom the individuals in your communities. It's crucial that we do this. And of course, this goes right back to what I mentioned earlier, the common denominator. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. You are a believer, I am a believer. Let us learn to live with each other. We will continue to have our differences. The Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in had differences. The Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in had wars, had battles with each other. They pulled out swords against each other based on principle. Who are we? Well, of course we'll have differences. Right? But their differences remained and their friendships remained. Their differences remained and their brotherhood and sisterhood remained. Right? They still remain brothers and sisters. That's very crucial. We need to be very conscious and very, very well aware of this. That we need to bring in the next generation. We need to groom them. We need to prepare them. We need to make dua for them so that we have guided and groomed the next generation of leaders in this ummah. Right? Islam, inshallah, will thrive in this ummah. Inshallah, in this community. But it's my and your responsibility. How many masajid that and I'm not even old, I haven't even traveled much around the world, but how many masajid have I seen with my 2 eyes that are no longer masajid? Right? The young need to acknowledge that the elders have placed the roots, have laid down the roots and the seeds and given these big, beautiful buildings to us. Now we need to move to the next level, and that next level is ensuring that the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that continues to frequent these masajid. Right? How many Muslims have gone to so many different shores and have lost their iman? It's true. I mean, let's look at our own history as Muslim Americans in the United States, when the African Americans came here because of the environment that they happened to be in. That Islam unfortunately did not carry on to the next generation. It didn't. It's a reality. Right? Now, of course, their situation was much different than ours. So we need to, of course, we built big, beautiful buildings, but what are we going to do to ensure that after I leave this dunya, this building remains as full, if not fuller, than what it is today? Because all the people that came here as 1 and 2 have now multiplied. You all came here as 1. Then you became 2. Now, mashallah, you're 5. Right? And then those 3 of yours are going to become 6. Right? And those 6... Well, and then, in about 30 years, you'll be a grandfather and say, I came to Cincinnati in 1995. Right? And this is all my children. And they're not going back home because they don't know what back home is anymore. Right? But it behooves us to teach them about Islam, teach them about Iman, to teach them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to groom them to be leaders, that when I get older, these are the people that will lead. That's what it comes down to. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and to protect us and to grant us tawfiq and love and mahabbah and compassion for each other, amongst each other, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I've said anything that has hurt anyone, please forgive me. That was not my intention. Right? I'm being honest, that was not my intention. My intention, I have this pain in my heart. I want to see the Muslim community progress. I want the Muslim community to go to a different level. I understand that, you know, even today, when I do certain things, I know that this is not something that maybe my teachers may approve of, for example, right? I studied in a very traditional madrasa in India, and these may not be things, but I have to understand the complexities of the environment that I happen to be in, the times that I happen to be in, and to be able, of course, I'm not doing anything haram. Don't think I'm going to some club and some happy hour and drinking here. But you know what I'm saying? Going out of the traditional role. What is the traditional role of an imam? Being a khatib, being a salah leader, but to be able to go out to the various different communities, to talk to them about Islam, to educate them about Islam. Be a Muslim, right? Be a Muslim. Right? And these are the things that we need to do. Every single one of us is a da'i. Every single one of us is a da'i. Right? Not necessarily da'i to Islam. Da'i to remove the hatred about Islam, because that's where we're at right now. We are at a point right now where people hate us. They don't even know who we are. They just don't know who we are. Right? And that's what we need to do. And you know, we all have different inspirations. I found out that I needed to come to Cincinnati about a month ago, maybe longer, I can't remember. And you know, I was looking for accommodations here, and you know, thanks to Facebook. Facebook is an amazing tool. That's why when people see, it's about how you use things, okay, and not necessarily. So I put it up on Facebook, and I got, you know, I was put in touch with a great sister here, Sister Amina, who guided us towards this Ronald McDonald House, right? And we've been there for 2 nights now, and today's, I think, is our 3rd night there. And I walked in, just the way they're organized. You know, from the moment you walk in, they asked us, and I believe Sister Amin is on the board there, you know, they asked us for water, they asked the children if they were doing well, you know, just everything. Like, if there's anything we can do, meals are provided. Of course, you know, there's many meals, most meals we can't go to, sausages and God knows what else. But, you know, it's just, you know, just the way it is, just caring for you, and in a whole system that's set up. At any given time, every single night, they have 78 families there. Right? I believe, and Sister Amina just told me, it was the 3rd largest Ronald McDonald House a few years ago. It happens to be the 7th largest now. Just imagine the service that they're providing. This is something that Muslims should have been doing. We're people of service. And I have you know, promised myself now. I'm very active within the non-Muslim community where I come from. Not necessarily by myself, but an inspiration to the community so that they can serve. I can't be everywhere at every single time. But I made a little oath to myself that when I go back home, I'm going to find the closest Ronald McDonald House, and I'm going to promise to them that the Muslim community will bring in a meal for the number of families that happen to be there once a week. We can do that once a week. Not so that we can convert people to Islam. Just so we do it, أطعم الطعام ويطعمون الطعام على حب. For the sake of Allah, for the love of just feeding people. Right? And maybe someday I was in Toronto last week, and I was lecturing, so I was in a hotel for a few nights, and I was made a roommate with another friend who's from Chicago. He's a Sheikh Bilal Ali, and I was telling him, I said, you know, when I have worked a lot with hotel workers. Hotel workers' rights, they don't get paid well. There's no health insurance for them. The women that happen to be there are mothers of 2-3 children. The amount of, you know, on average, a hotel worker has to clean an entire room in about 8 minutes. Okay, that's why you should, when you travel, you should go to union-approved hotels. But again, that's a topic for another day. And I tell people that I generally leave. I told Sheikh Bilal, I said, when I leave in the morning, I like to, you know, put all my trash together, put all the towels on one side, so that when this lady comes in to clean, I mean, I've done maybe 2 to 3 minutes of her job for her. And I would leave a $5 tip, you know, every day, just leave it there. And I'm not saying this. So he asked me a question. He said, so do they know you're a Muslim? I said, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. If Allah inspires them, they probably do, because when I travel I have tons of books with me, and they all say Islam, and they're all in Arabic, and they're all sitting on the so they probably do, but even if they don't, we do what we do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. we need to learn to be good people. May Allah continue to bless us. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Again, if I've said anything, please do forgive me. If you feel that there's something that I can learn from you, please do see me after Salatul Isha. I would be grateful to you, to this community, for teaching me things that I wouldn't know and I didn't know. And with that said, maybe we have a few minutes for questions. What time is Salatul Isha?
It's 45, but if it's necessary, we may delay it a little bit.
I'm generally not a fan of verbal questions anyways. I like my questions to be written because otherwise, but if anyone feels that they have something to say or a question and we can keep it short and not deliver a lecture, that would be appreciated. Brother, I'll let you go first and then you can go next, inshallah. Yes. And the sisters, I believe if you raise your hands, we can see you as well. And you can, yes.
I came in late, so I'm sorry if you addressed this already. You talked about developing the community, developing the youth. What do you find to be the biggest obstacles to that happening?
You do want me to go back home and not be buried in Cincinnati. The greatest obstacle generally happens to be the politics of the masjid. I don't mean the board of directors. I mean just people who have certain ideas of how a masjid should be and how a masjid should be run, and just the youth are taking over or things along those lines, And what I found to be very successful is creating a relaxed atmosphere in the masjid, where youth can come at any time, in any manner that they happen to be in, because this is the house of Allah. It is a sanctuary, and when they've done something wrong or they feel they need help, they should be able to come into the masjid, to put their forehead on the ground, to sit in a corner, to sit on the back wall and just talk to Allah. You know what I'm saying? Without being judged because you're wearing shorts or you're not wearing a hijab, or what's a sister in tight jeans doing inside the masjid in the middle of the day? You should be at home praying, blah, blah. No, very non-judgmental. It's a sanctuary. It's a house of Allah. It's creating that safe environment. I mean, this is a topic, but I think that's something that we can start with.
You said a lot of things are judgmental. Anybody claims to be Muslim is considered as Muslim. But sometimes we see that people sit down in invitation or in the gathering. These people are Muslim, so they sit and pray, but criticize about the verses of Quran, such as like the division of the inheritance, where Allah said half to the girls and this person, I don't like this, or the discussion about why man and do we engage or go to those kind of gathering, or we avoid them?
Yeah, there's people who have. Is that the adhan that's going?
No, you're fine until you finish salah.
I don't want to be disrespectful to the masjid. So.
No, you are our guest. Inshallah, we can do it for one night. So it's inshallah. There are people who have, various differences and various opinions, and if you can explain to them, or if you can get someone to explain to them the correct things, alhamdulillah. If you can't, you still have to believe, of course, part and parcel of our iman is to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believe in the kalam of Allah, the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being the qawl, the final qawl, and the haqq, the truth. But of course, we see various different individuals. There may be certain individuals who we would assume that based on the environment that they happen to be in, the people that they are around with, it's difficult for them to understand certain verses of the Quran. And so, of course, we should try to explain to them. If we can't explain to them, then of course, I wouldn't generally say, stop being friends with them or things like that. I mean, it depends on how much they believe or not believe. Some people would outright say, well, I don't believe in the Quran. Well, if you're not going to believe in the Quran, I'm going to have a little problem with you. Not in the sense, but just But what I mean to say is generally, what I was getting at generally is the fact that many of us we come from different cultures, different practices, and then we start sort of having these arguments at each other as to you do this, you don't do this. Your method of saying the shahada in prayer is wrong, mine is right, my finger shakes, yours doesn't, my salam this, your salam. Of course, along these fiqhi lines. So those are things that shouldn't divide us.
And you know, a lot of people who have these kinds of questions are genuinely people who just haven't understood. Right? It's just very difficult for them. They've been consumed by an environment in which everything needs to make logical sense. And Iman is believing in the unseen. Right? قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We heard and we have obeyed. It's not about سَمِعْنَا وَسَأَلْنَا وَفَهِمْنَا ثُمَّ أَطَعْنَا. That's not what it is. It's not about understanding. Islam, we believe, khalas, this is the will of Allah. And so it's that level of Iman. And if someone doesn't have that level of Iman, we make dua for them, we help them get there. That's what it comes down to. We have to help each other. We have to help each other. Yes. Sisters, is there a hand? No? Okay.
Yes,
there is. Yes, please go ahead. I'm sorry I couldn't see you.
My question is for the people that are actually leaving the session, just starting from non-profits. Do you think advice for them? This idea of building networking themselves to try to make an impact on masjid, just whatever advice. Actually, the comment is, that around the class was actually a need of family waiting list. And because I told them that Imam Tahir is one of our scholars, they want to work on the top of the waiting list. So subhanAllah, there are other scholars. And if anyone wants to volunteer, who wants to donate, who wants to help the one in the house, there's a thing that was there for 2 years. And after they were there for a year, they came and asked me, are there any Muslims here? Because I was the first Muslim after having been there for a year. And it's really sad because we're not history. So we want to volunteer to talk to
Right, yeah. So yeah, again, there's a lot of non-profits. It's just, I'll tell you this, and people my age would testify to this. If you're in your 30s today, you're probably amongst sort of that generation, 30s, 40s, amongst that generation of individuals whose parents generally say, we were the first people in this community. Right? I've been in America for 30 years. My dad happens to be one of the first few, not a handful, but the first 30, 40, 50 families in a certain community. Any one of us that ended up going to Sunday school just once a week, although I do firmly believe that Sunday school does not suffice for your Islamic education, but any one of us that went to Sunday school once a week, our Iman, today we're believers. Yani we pray, we give zakah, we're believers. Right? So don't underestimate the value of the services that we provide. It may be something as little as a Sunday school. But I'm telling you this from experience as a young Muslim American who grew up in the United States. Sunday school did not suffice. I'm telling you, it did not suffice. It's far from anything. But so you have to keep in mind that these are things, these are activities that we do have. Of course, a lot of these young individuals are now going out and starting their nonprofits. But of course, you know, it behooves the masjid leaders as to not look at these as competing organizations. These are organizations that are just adding value to the community. That's all they're doing. If anything, the masjid should give them support. Like how, you're a local Muslim organization that's getting off the ground. How can we help you? How can we support you? Because you are adding value to the ummah as a whole. That's how we need to see this, and not as a competing organization that, oh my God, you're going to bite out of our contributions and donations now, right? We're 3 different organizations in the same community. No, it doesn't work that way, right? Allah's treasures are vast and endless. خير إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير. سبحان الله وبحمده. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.